Sadiq Ibrahim was forced to flee Afghanistan 12 years ago and hasn't seen his family in person for years.
It's very difficult to wake up every morning and not knowing what's going to happen to your family.
He worked as an Afghan interpreter with the Canadian Army until 2010 when his life was threatened and he found refuge in Canada. He worried for the safety of his elderly parents and 5 siblings, so in 2017 he applied for them to become permanent residents in Canada under humanitarian and compassionate grounds. While they waited, he moved them to India. But nothing has happened with their file, despite being approved last year under a special program for Afghans who assisted the government of Canada.
The government is equally responsible and should provide the means and support them. And I mean, Afghan interpreters are relatively educated mostly, and they're fairly more established, and they can do a lot for their families and for their relatives.
The Saskatoon man feels isolated and says his mental health is suffering with these delays from the Federal Immigration Department.
Why they're holding up on the final approval of my family's application. It doesn't take long.
The Canadian government has committed to resettle 40,000 Afghan people in Canada. Since August last year, nearly 17,600 Afghans and their family members have arrived. Ibrahim says some families in Afghanistan are being hunted by Taliban because they have helped the Canadian forces. I spoke with a 16-year-old in Kabul who says he was beaten for hours, whipped and tortured multiple times just because his uncle worked with the Canadian forces. Ibrahim now worries the same fate for his relatives in Afghanistan.
I have been so exhausted with the government. I don't want anyone else to go through that.
Ibrahim says with each passing day, his hope for reunification in Saskatoon is fading. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.